This is San Diego Insider Magazine.
Our first story in this program deals with an explosive issue, toxic mold. Sometimes you can see it, more often you can't. Either way, it has the potential to do great harm, and that's why when some San Diego teachers alleged their schools had a mold problem that made them too sick to work, the charges and countercharges started flying. Jeannie Rodden now with what she found about these reports of school sickness.
School's out for summer at Sherman Elementary in Sherman Heights. But students won't be coming back in the fall. That's because this school is being demolished. Susan Brinkman, who used to be a teacher here, hasn't gone inside for 2 years, ever since she got sick while working here.
I started out with gastrointestinal problems, and it led into lung problems, sinus problems, and the latter two, the lung and sinus, are still with me as permanent problems. It was like stabbing pains. I had no idea what was going on. I thought maybe I had something fatal. It was so painful.
A staff survey at the time identified 2/3 of teachers experiencing a whole host of illnesses and symptoms.
Same things I had, which I thought were just my own illness, which was coming from somewhere I had no idea.
Teachers were so frustrated, they wrote letters to the school district pleading for help. They cited coughing, sore throat, sinus infections, multiple respiratory illnesses, and chronic bronchitis. They also signed a petition asking for the school vents and ducts to be cleaned.
They had found out that it hadn't been cleaned for 25 years.
The school district did request a health department inspection and contracted an independent industrial hygienist to test buildings. All came up negative for mold. But a national expert on mold who reviewed the tests said the sampling was not done properly, nor was it adequate, and cites the report as being too limited. Meanwhile, Susan Brinkman's doctors diagnosed her with toxic mold exposure.
I have the typical symptoms of a mold-exposed person, a person poisoned by mycotoxins, which are fungal poisons.
Brinkman has since started her own website called schoolmoldhelp.org. She includes teachers from across the country who also experienced mold in their schools. But as for Sherman,
there was never an issue with mold at Sherman, ever.
Why do these teachers get sick?
They didn't get sick. Did you look at the records?
Did you look at the letters?
I
have letters that
say
that they've been sick.
Well, it doesn't matter what they've said. The facts are the facts.
San Diego Schools spokesperson Tom Mitchell says Sherman is being demolished and a new school put in its place because of economics.
We made a decision, let's look at Sherman. Can we remodel it? Sure, but it'll cost more than just rebuilding it. So we tore it down.
Were health concerns any part of that equation?
Health concerns were no consideration at all.
To find out more about what's going on at Sherman, we set up an interview with the school principal, Maria Gomez, 3 times. She canceled all 3 interviews and would not talk to us on camera.
A supervisor involved in risk management, Glenn Bogren, who deals directly with school inspections, also refused to appear on camera with us. In fact, it took us more than 50 phone calls to get even one interview on camera with Tom Mitchell. His title is Director of Parent and Community Involvement. He doesn't deal with mold or environmental concerns directly. As far as Principal Gomez,
she just chose, she didn't want to talk, period. She's there to fill in a gap until the school closes in the next month, and then she's going to go to a different school.
Another school, Kennedy Elementary, has already been demolished, a new school already being built. Here, more than 80 teachers and staff filed complaints that the buildings were making them sick. Janet Peterson was one of them.
I had chronic laryngitis, sore throat, headaches, burning, running eyes. Initially, there were probably 15 or 20 teachers, and as we went along and had meetings and talked about it, there were at least 110 teachers and adults. There were many children that just had chronic coughs, children that complained of headaches. 6-year-olds don't complain of headaches a whole lot.
A toxicologist tested the site.
He found that there were incidences of mold in certain situations.
He found fungal species considered hazardous to human health.
The concerns to health were investigated just as they were at Sherman. Looked at, tested, not an issue. Was not an issue in rebuilding Kennedy. The issue that we did look at, like I said, was these bungalows were pretty old and pretty beat up.
Janet Peterson, along with several other teachers, filed workman's comp cases over conditions at Kennedy.
I lost the court suit and was yelled at in court and accused of lying to the toxicologist that the school district had hired to examine us.
But Peterson says she'd do it all over again for one reason.
The children don't have a voice. And that was my initial reasoning for speaking out. They had very young parents. They had parents that maybe their legality was a little questionable.
If there was mold at Sherman and Kennedy, as these teachers believe, then all evidence has now been demolished. But part of the problem with mold is that testing can be inaccurate. And often you can't see mold or its spores. But what you can't see can still be devastating.
They also create substances that get put in the environment called mycotoxins. And again, some of these mycotoxins are very devastating, and there are several that are used for bacteriological warfare.
Symptoms of toxic mold exposure include severe fatigue, respiratory problems, skin rashes, stomach and digestive problems, neurological damage, memory loss, and in extreme cases, heart attack and death.
There ends up being people who just can't function on an ongoing basis because of exposures like this.
Exposure can happen anywhere, even in the home.
One family in National City with 4 children knew they had mold growing in their house. They just didn't realize how harmful it could be to their kids.
What we had was 10 feet by 10 feet of mold, plus 3 feet up of mold. It was all saturated, the black mold. What happened next, the curtains got saturated with mold. The baby's crib got saturated with mold, and there was a 2-month baby there at the whole time. Right now, she's under the evaluation of possible asthma.
2 children in the home have already been diagnosed with asthma, which is often found to be related to mold.
They have no idea that this mold is going to be this, affecting my health this much. They have no idea. And especially if they've had less than 3rd grade education, they do not know.
Now, thanks to a free program in National City called Healthy Homes, Dulce and her family are getting lots of home improvements, including a new heater. They used to boil water on the stove to stay warm, which made the mold problem worse. They've replaced the carpet with tile, and their couch is now leather to keep mold from growing.
So how do you feel now about your house?
It's happy.
But not all mold stories have happy endings. Experts say that mold growth is becoming more common in newer buildings because of the materials they use today, like sheetrock, which is made of paper and which can be a breeding ground for mold. I'm Jeannie Rodden, Channel 4, San Diego.